ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930 present The Drive.
It is Thursday, May 8th. Your drive begins now on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. Our text line this hour is open. It's brought to you by Clark's Pump and Shop at 304-396-TALK. That is 304-396-8255. As we start lining that up, we've got a guest today we're going to get to in a few minutes. I'm looking forward to this one. A couple of days ago, it was announced that Wayne Ryan would be the new executive director of the WVSSAC, and he's going to join us here in the next few minutes. So we're going to talk to him about taking over the position. He's been with the organization several years now. So bigger office, maybe. Day-to-day business, maybe the same. He'll have a little bit more direct control over that. We're going to find out from him what changes, what stays the same, what he's looking forward to. That's coming up in a few minutes. And, of course, we've got softball to get into and everything else today. We have to start with softball because the Herd just wrapped up its game against Coastal Carolina. Herd was in the quarterfinals, the number 2 seed. So Marshall had a good shot at getting to the finals. Unfortunately, that fell apart today. Marshall lost to Coastal Carolina, the 7 seed, 5-2, and it did not start well for the Herd. Marshall gave up 2 in the first, and the second, Coastal and Marshall would kind of calm down. The next offensive output would be in the third. Coastal would score 3, Marshall would score 2, and then that was it for the scoring. 5 runs, 6 hits, 3 errors. Marshall, 2 runs, 6 hits, 1 error. And unfortunately, Bub Faringa only got 2.1 innings. She gave up 5 hits and 5 runs. Unfortunately, her day was done. And then Thundering Herd settled down. Damage was done. Too little, too late. Marshall couldn't get any more offense generated. And Thundering Herd now season over, eliminated from the quarterfinal round of the Sun Belt tournament. Disappointing. I think that's the best way to describe it. It was a great season. You can't take anything away from them, and you're not trying to. But this was disappointing. I'm sure they would say the same thing if you asked the players. Disappointing. You're the number 2 seed. You could have been the number 1 seed. You win a game or two here or there, you're the number 1 seed. Doesn't matter, though, because the tournament is a different beast altogether, and Marshall was just unable to get going and unable to rally. Not one of those classic Thundering Herd rallies we've seen all year long. So still a good season. You finish the regular season second. You bow out early, quarterfinals in the Sun Belt Conference tournament. So the Herd will be heading home now, disappointed for sure. And let's hope that the Thundering Herd can regroup for next season. Obviously, that's the best we can do. Got to wait till next season for this team, and it's a shame. It really is. We had high expectations for this team. So still can't take anything away from what they were able to do. So congratulations to Morgan Zirkle and her squad. Outstanding season. Unfortunately, ends a little early and ends in a disappointing way. Baseball action. We are clear tonight. The Pirates lost to the Cardinals 5-0 yesterday. And so the team has the day off. Management's been a little busy today. So we got the word earlier in the afternoon that the Pittsburgh Pirates relieved Derek Shelton of his duties. And that's because the Pirates have been abysmal. Let's just go ahead and call it what it is. The Pirates, 12-26, 10 games back of the Cubs. And you look at what the Pirates' record has been under Derek Shelton, it was abysmal. 306 wins, 440 losses in 5+ seasons with the Pirates. Now, Shelton put a lot of time in. Pirates, of course, gave these standard responses. talking about how they appreciated what he was able to do those past 5 years and became a big part of the Pirates family, all the buzzwords there. But at the end of the day, the Pirates need a lot to fix what's going on. Payroll is abysmal. That's my word of the day, abysmal, because it's the only way I can describe this thing. The Pirates are ranked 26th out of 30th in teams with opening day payroll. And you got Paul Swann, the rookie of the year is on your team, Paul Swann, and you're unable to get anything going. I'm sure interest is at an all-time low this season with the Pirates. The Pirates haven't made the postseason since 2015. The Angels are the only team with a longer drought since 2014. So disappointing for sure with the Pirates. Off day for the team, so the shakeup happens on the off day. And now bench coach Don Kelly is going to take over. Shelton, the first manager fired across Major League Baseball this season. So he's the first one out. Do you think that Don Kelly is going to be able to get this team in a competitive shape, at least make the season interesting? I know there's a lot of baseball still to be played, but can Kelly turn this thing around or at least make it look respectable? I think part of it has to do with Pittsburgh, of course, a small market team compared to the others. And you look at the spending. The Pirates just don't spend money. And Pirates are near the bottom in all the major categories. It's just not a productive team. And there have been those that have been trying to convince me all year long, hey, this is fun. Baseball in general. And, it's not the thing that I like the most. I'm not the biggest baseball fan. I mean, I will watch baseball. I will enjoy baseball. But, I don't sit and live through it, the numbers. I don't, hang on every pitch. But I do like a good baseball game. And if you follow the Pirates, it just hasn't been good baseball. Of course, we'll have the Pirates for you coming up tomorrow right here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930 as I kind of try to build you back up here. We got the games. I feel for you, Pirates fans. I really do. I feel definitely for you. It's been a long time coming. I think the change should have been made a few years ago with this team. It has not been. Will the Pirates continue to do what the Pirates do? You change the management. You don't change the spending. You don't bring players in. You don't keep the right players. You don't make the right transactions. What can you do to fix this team? So Pirates baseball, a little bit of a retooling today. We're going to turn our attention when we continue to the new executive director of the WVSSAC. Wayne Ryan joins us on the other side of the break on this edition of The Drive, ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
It's the Grand Slam sales event at Ironton Automotive, and you're up to bat. Drive one out of here with unbeatable deals on winning lineups of cars, trucks, and SUVs. Slide into a new ride today with easy financing, top dollar trade-ins, and home run savings that'll have you rounding the bases in style. Don't wait, these offers won't last forever. Visit 2125 South 3rd Street in Ironton, Ohio, or online anytime at irontonautomotive.com and score big before this event heads for the fences.
Truck accident? Tom Boggs is here for you in Huntington, and he's brought the expertise of Warner Law Offices with him.
Call 345-6789.
Hi, I'm Nori, and over the years, my mother and I have opened our homes to those who need it most, and it's been so rewarding. I bet you didn't know that some adults who have unfortunately been mistreated need a place to call home in West Virginia. It happens more than you know. They may have some physical or mental limitations, and they need your help. Everyone deserves a place to call their own. I can tell you from my experience, it's worth it.
If you have an open heart and want to open your home, Adult Family Care may be the right fit for you. Call the Department of Human Services and ask to speak to an Adult Family Care Home Finder at 304-269-6820. Sponsored by the West Virginia Department of Human Services, the West Virginia Broadcasters Association, and this station. This project is supported by the Administration for Community Living, ACL, of the United States U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, as part of a financial assistance award totaling $1,227,345, with 100% funded by ACL HHS. The contents are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of, nor an endorsement by ACL HHS or the U.S. government.
The soundtrack to your summer is back. Mount West 9th Street Live, downtown Huntington's favorite Friday night tradition, presented by Michelob Ultra and White Claw. Kick off the summer Friday, May 16th. It's K&B Pest Control Night with Brad Goodall on the Marshall OBGYN stage. The Little Caesars Kids Zone is back, and Go Mart Happy Hour starts at 5. Enjoy food and drinks from the Marshall Hall of Fame Cafe, Sip Downtown Brasserie, and Summit Beer Station. Mark your calendar for next Friday, May 23rd for the Hooligans Homecoming Pre-Party. June 6th, 9th Street is Dead featuring John Ingram's Dead Center and the music of the Grateful Dead. The Thundering Herd Rally is Friday, August 15th. 9th Street Live is driven by University Ford and built by Cardinal Roofing. Every Friday night through Labor Day, 9th Street Live in Huntington, in between 3rd and 4th Avenues. Sponsored by Delta Hotels, Wendy's, Mountain Mindful, the City of Huntington, Marshall University, Blanco Glass Company, Marshall Health Network Arena, and Kindred Communications. Next Friday, it's Brad Goodall at Mount West 9th Street Live.
Listening to The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
Our text line this hour open at 304-396-TALK, 304-396-8255, brought to you by Clark's Pump and Shop. We'll get to that here in just a few moments. I want to welcome to the program now. He's going to be taking over July 1st as the executive director of the WVSSAC. David Price is retiring from the position, and so we want to welcome to the program someone you probably know by now. He has been a fixture, probably Friday nights on high school game night, or of course he's been a big part of the WVSSAC for several years. Wayne Ryan has been elevated to the executive director, and he now joins us on the program. Wayne, congratulations. I'm excited to bring you on the program and talk really about all the exciting things that are going to be happening when you take over as the executive director.
Absolutely, Paul. It's a pleasure to be on with you.
So you've been in the organization for several years. So for you, is it going to just be more business as usual, more on your plate? How do you envision this transition?
Well, the role as assistant director, you're directly over certain sports, and in my situation, I was over hotels, sanctioning, reimbursement, academic awards, ticketing, several of those type jobs too. Obviously, those will be farmed out, and other people will take those responsibilities. So I won't be sports specific or task specific, but I'll be much more in a directive overseeing a realm, and then I'll have to handle more communications and relationships with outside stakeholders than I've done previously, I believe. But I think I'm prepared for that because I think, as you say, I have the institutional knowledge, the experience, and I think also, when we bring our new staff on board, I think I can really help get them trained and up to speed quickly because of a lot of their tasks I have performed.
And for those who may not be as familiar with your career, you've been with the institution for a long time, so you know the back end, you know the ins and outs of what it takes to run the WVSSAC. Also, you have that institutional knowledge from being an administrator on the school side, of course, coaching as well. So you come from both worlds. How does that give you an advantage when you take over this position? You know the needs of the organization. You know the needs of the member institutions. That gives you pretty much a huge advantage as far as being able to talk to everybody and know how to handle all these situations, or at least we're hopeful that that's the case.
Absolutely. I hope that is a strength because, as I like to explain, I think I've performed about every role. I mean, I've been the parent of a very successful athlete. I have been a coach. I have been a WVSSAC official, umpired baseball for many years. I have been the school administrator. I have been a countywide athletic director and a school athletic director. And so I have fulfilled a lot of those roles on top of 9 years of experience in the SSAC office. So I think any call I get, I kind of can relate to. And I think it's very important that you can relate to the schools when they call with issues, that you understand the ground level problem they're talking about. You've been there, you've done that. And I think I can do that with coaches. I think I can do that with parents. And I think I can do that with our principals. So I'm looking forward to those opportunities.
You also have a unique, I would say that you bring someone new into a position, they're always looking around, okay, what's worked, what isn't working, how can we fix this? You have a situation where you're there now, so you already know what needs to improve, what do we've got to work on. So do you anticipate you can hit the ground running day one when it comes to let's move forward? We don't really have to find out a lot of things about the organization. You already know everything, as you alluded to. So how do you envision day one going for you as you move forward? And, of course, you want to put your fingerprints on this as well. This is, now your position.
Well, I think the advantage of the experience is definitely there, and I think that will help day one. But I think day one, what we have to do is organize and move forward quickly, because it's going to be a time crunch. I mean, new staff will come on. I will technically take over on July 1. And, we have our first summer clinic tour on July 22. So, we'll be out in the fall sports tour full-fledged and working. And we'll have our regional principals meetings. And so we'll have a short time to put everything together. So, hopefully it's an advantage that I've been there, done that, so to speak. But everybody will have to learn their new roles, and we'll move forward. We definitely want to make some changes. Number one, we exist to serve our schools, and we want to make sure that we're available and that we're really, there to help our schools with the issues that they need help with. And we have to improve our communications, and we have to grow and develop relationships so that people are more familiar with what our organization really is. I think there's a lack of understanding of who and what is the WVSSAC and how did it get its rules and policies and procedures, and where do they come from. And, everybody likes guidelines until they apply to them. So, we have to educate the public and all of our stakeholders about how our rules come about, that we at the office, we're only there to enforce them. We don't make the rules. The rules come from three places. Number one, they come from our principals. It's a principals organization, and they propose and make rules at our Board of Control. And then number two, some of our rules come from the State Department of Ed. A great example of that is our 2.0 GPA rule. And then number three, sometimes we get rules given to us by state law that we are mandated to follow. So the rules come to us from other entities. It's our job to enforce them, and it's our job to be there as a liaison to the schools concerning those rules.
My guest is the new executive director of the WVSSAC. He'll be taking the job on July 1st. Wayne Ryan is with us. And when you take over and you start working on that communication and building that infrastructure back up, are there some big ticket items for you that you really want to start working on, or do you see this as a gradual progression towards some of those things as you try to rebuild or build the organization back up with your staff, filling some positions and improving that communication?
Well, I think immediately, our first objective, and we're already working on this, our Board of Control recently passed some new classification rules. They still have to be approved by the State Department of Education, but we want to get those issues settled with our classification issues so we can move forward. There's a lot of concern out there over our current flex day procedures and rules, so that has to be taken at that quickly, I believe. We've got to look at our tournament structure, because our classifications have changed, and we've got fewer schools in our state, but we've got more classifications. So we may have to think outside the box and be creative in how we structure some of our tournaments, and it might be a little different from one level to the other, how we do that. Those are all thoughts that we have to move forward and think about. You cannot do everything like you did it 20 years ago in today's culture, today's society, and in the structure of our schools at this current time.
I know that's going to be a tough one for a lot of schools, because you have multiple classifications, as you alluded to, and in Quad A, you have everybody just about gets into the playoff. If you maybe look at it where you maybe make it only 8 instead of 16, the other 8 are going to complain. So you've got so much in front of you as far as trying to juggle all of that. But to your point, it's not Wayne Ryan sitting there handing down edicts, and that's probably a great issue there to kind of stress. The WVSSAC, it's not a dictatorship. You're enforcing the rules, and I think that does get lost in the mix sometimes. So I'm glad you brought that point up.
Absolutely, Paul, and we have to really bring that point home because you're exactly right. We are not the four administrators in the office. That is not who the WVSSAC is. It is our membership schools, our principals. That's the strength, and that is who makes the guidelines of our organization. And just like you alluded to just now, and your mind went where very many people's do. When you talked about classification, their first thought was football. And that's 20 schools now in Quad A, and this current time 16 make the playoffs. If 16 need to make the playoffs, that's up for debate and discussion. But think about all the other sports that are now Quad A and have 20 schools. So think about your regional breakdown across. If you've ever looked at the map, and our state's really shaped oddly, and so we have an odd-shaped state with only 20 Quad A schools to try to put into regions. So do we combine regions? Do we have regions of 6, 5, 4, and 4? What do we do, and how do we break those down? And the thing about that is, Paul, no matter how we break it down, there are always going to be someone that's located geographically on the map that is an outlier, and they're going to be unhappy, and they're going to wish that it was a little different. But you really cannot. That has been a problem my entire 35-year involvement with the SSAC from the school level on up. You cannot set up a region that at some point doesn't have an outlier or a school that maybe really doesn't fit best there, but they've got to go somewhere to keep the balance.
My guest is Wayne Ryan. He will be the new executive director of the WVSSAC starting on July 1st. And as you start to get a handle on the transition of what you're going to be able to do, what you're going to put your hands on directly, and what you're going to farm out, are there some things that maybe the WVSSAC isn't doing now that have been on a wish list that we haven't talked about? Or are there some items there that maybe you would like to push forward to see this organization do? It could be either from an infrastructure standpoint, a communication standpoint, as you alluded to, or just something different, with the schools that you would like to champion.
Well, a couple things. First of all, we're very also misunderstood in that people assume that the WVSSAC is a state agency, and we're not. And we do not get tax dollars, and most people believe we do. We operate on postseason tournament revenue, and that's not in every sport. Certain sports, even the postseason revenue goes to the schools, but our revenue comes from postseason revenue, and it also comes from our corporate sponsors. If we're a state agency, we couldn't have those corporate sponsors, and really, if we didn't have the corporate sponsors, we could not operate our office and run the events that we do and the quality of the state tournament events that we run. So we want to continue to improve and increase the amount of corporate sponsors that we have and that we work with in relationship to the organization. And then I really want to improve communications in general, so that the public better understands, and even our member schools and everybody involved better understands some specific rules. What is the eligibility rule? What is the transfer rule? What are these various rules, and how are they applied? I think there's just so much unknown that people get confused and frustrated. We've really got to work on education and communication, and we've got to get moving on that very quickly.
I know we're not literally talking about a bus here, but you're thinking about maybe doing some bus stop tours where you go across the state and maybe, hands-on, go on the ground and start talking to some people a little bit more, and not just coaches, but, fans, because high school sports is one thing that we can say it's very passionate here in the state of West Virginia, more so than most states. It's not the biggest state in the United States, but it's probably one of the more passionate states when it comes to high school sports. And I think you're hitting home a lot of points, even for people like myself who work in the media. There's a lot of misconceptions sometimes that we get it wrong, and that leads to a lot of friction sometimes, and a lot of friction that's unwarranted when it comes to your office.
Well, I think, and when I coached, I used to say that there's two things that lead to mistake, and one was fatigue, and we have to take care of that and how we worked every day and how we prepared, and one was confusion. And I think that as the administrator in the office, we've got to eliminate a lot of this confusion, at all levels, with the parent level, with the athlete level, with our schools and our schools administration. Listen, in today's world, school administrators turn over at a really high rate. And so you get a lot of new people in there that may or may not have any background in athletics and athletic administration. So we've got to really be available, and we've got to give them tools and opportunities, right down to maybe create a lot of tutorials that we can put on our website. So when people have certain aspects of something they're asking about, they can click on that, and there is a summary of how this rule works, so it could be reached by anyone at any time.
Wayne Ryan is with us. He will be the next executive director of the WVSSAC. He will take over starting on July 1st as he is replacing David Price, who is retiring. And so now that you take this position over and you have an opportunity to kind of shape it a little bit more in your direction, one thing that always comes up, you've mentioned it earlier in some degree, is postseason tournaments, locations. Since one of those tournaments, of course, is the wrestling tournament that's here in Huntington, could you speak to that a little bit and the job that Huntington has done in keeping that tournament and really making it a viable tournament for wrestling across the state?
Absolutely. We've been in Huntington.
Hi, this is Dave Wilson, host of Metro News Talk Line, and you're listening to The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930.
Thanks, Dave. Don't forget, you can catch Dave tomorrow morning, 10:06, right here on ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. I appreciate everyone sticking through our technical difficulties. I want to thank our guest from earlier in the program, the new executive director of the WVSSAC, Wayne Ryan. He'll take the job over on July 1st, so we appreciate him joining us on the program. We will post today's interview on our podcast. That'll be available later on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thanks for being a part of it. We apologize once again for our technical difficulties. We will be back with you tomorrow right here. Same time, ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. Broadcasting from the Dave & Buster's studios. Eat, drink, play, and watch at Dave & Buster's in the Huntington Mall. ESPN 94.1 and AM 930. WRBC, W231BS Huntington.